Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're really getting into Election Day. Not just, a date you circle. It's this whole mix of culture, history, civic life. It's a lot.
It really is.
And we know you want the key info, quick, but also thorough. So that's what we're doing here.
Yeah, we've gone through a good amount of material on this one, a pretty comprehensive source.
Our mission, basically, is to pull out the most important bits, the really interesting nuggets about Election Day. Give you those aha moments without drowning you in details.
Exactly, a shortcut to getting up to speed.
Okay, so let's start unpacking it. Where do we begin? Maybe the cultural side.
Sounds good. I mean, Election Day is such a powerful symbol, isn't it? It's democracy in action, literally. The idea that the people choose their leaders made real.
Absolutely, the foundation. And it's interesting how it's both things at once.
How do you mean?
Well, it's this moment of national unity, millions doing the same thing, but it also really highlights how divided we can be, all those different opinions coming out.
That's a really key point. It's a moment of collective action, but also reveals the deep lines and different views within the country.
And thinking about that, for communities who've maybe been pushed to the margins historically.
Right. For them, Election Day can feel particularly empowering, a chance to claim a voice, to participate in a system that wasn't always open.
Yeah, a really significant aspect. Okay, let's maybe shift gears a bit to the history. How did we even land on this specific day?
The classic first Tuesday after the first Monday in November. That was locked in federally back in 1845.
Seems incredibly specific. There has to be a reason.
Oh, there is. And it's actually quite practical thinking about the mid-19th century. They needed one single uniform day for choosing electors nationwide.
Okay, makes sense. But why Tuesday?
Well, think about travel back then. People often went to church on Sunday. Monday was needed for travel, especially for rural folks heading to the county seat to vote.
Right, journeys took longer.
Exactly. And Wednesday was often market day, so Tuesday sort of fit neatly in between, disrupting things the least.
Huh. Logistics, basically. That makes a lot of sense. And from that point, 1845, we've seen this long, often difficult evolution of who actually gets to participate.
A huge evolution. You start with the 15th Amendment in 1870. Crucial. Granting voting rights regardless of race, at least on paper.
Right, the on-paper part is important there.
Hugely important, because for nearly a century after, all sorts of tactics, literacy tests, poll taxes, intimidation were used to undermine that right, especially for black men in the South.
So the legal right existed, but the reality on the ground was very different.
Precisely. It really underscores why things like the Voting Rights Act later on were so necessary to actually enforce the right.
Okay, so 15th Amendment,
Yeah.
then comes 1920, the 19th Amendment.
Women's suffrage, another massive milestone after decades of struggle.
Absolutely. And then, as you mentioned, the Voting Rights Act of 1965, that feels like a real turning point in making these rights more concrete.
It really was. It finally dismantled many of those discriminatory barriers, like literacy tests, and provided federal oversight in areas with a history of suppression. It led to a dramatic increase in voter registration and participation among minority groups.
And its impact, its relevance, is still something we talk about a lot today, isn't it?
Constantly. Debates around voting access, potential barriers. The legacy of the VRA is very much alive.
And speaking of participation, looking at more recent times, 2020 saw a huge turnout.
Record, actually. Nearly 160 million votes cast in the presidential election. That's a massive number.
It really is. And a lot of that seems tied to newer ways of voting, right?
Definitely. The rise of early voting, voting by mail. These options have become much more widespread and accepted. They offer more flexibility.
Which likely helps boost those participation numbers.
It seems logical, yeah. Makes it easier for people with tricky schedules or mobility issues.
Okay, so we have this deep history, this civic weight, but Election Day also has its own, maybe lighter set of traditions, things you just associate with the day.
Oh, for sure. Like the I voted sticker.
Yes. That little sticker has become huge, hasn't it? It's like a badge of honor.
It really has. People wear it proudly, stick it on their laptops, post selfies with it online.
It's a social signal. I did my civic duty.
Exactly. And maybe it nudges others, too. It's amazing how powerful that small symbol has become.
Then there are the exit polls. You always see reporters outside polling places.
Right. Trying to get an early sense of the results, who voted, why they voted that way. The media uses it to start building the narrative.
Though they're not always spot on, are they?
No, definitely not always perfect predictors. But they offer initial insights into demographics, voter motivations, that kind of thing.
And the watch parties. Election night often means gathering somewhere.
Yeah, people getting together with friends, family, maybe community groups huddled around a screen watching the results trickle in.
It makes it a shared event, less isolating.
Totally, a collective moment of anticipation, maybe anxiety, maybe celebration, depending on how it goes.
It's also interesting how everyday places transform. Schools, churches, libraries become polling stations for the day.
I always find that interesting, too. It really roots the democratic process right in the heart of the community, doesn't it? In these familiar, accessible spaces.
Yeah, it makes it feel very local, very grounded.
Mm-hmm. And beyond just voting, you see active efforts like voter registration drives.
Right, groups working to get new voters signed up, sometimes even offering rides to the polls.
Those efforts are so important for accessibility, trying to lower the barriers some people face to participating. It's about strengthening democracy by including more voices.
Definitely. Okay, let's maybe switch lanes a bit. Something maybe less obvious. Music.
Yeah. Music and political engagement have a long intertwined history.
It feels like certain genres are particularly connected. Folk, rock, hip-hop.
Absolutely. They've often been the soundtrack for social movements, for protests, for calls to action. Music can express political feelings in a really powerful, emotional way.
You think of songs like Sam Cooke's Change is Gonna Come or Public Enemy's Fight the Power.
Classic examples. Or Kendrick Lamar's All Right. These become anthems, tapping into deep feelings about justice and change.
And older stuff, too, like Woody Guthrie's This Land Is Your Land. That sense of shared ownership, of ideals.
Right. These songs shape how people feel and think about political issues. They inspire action. They build community around ideas.
Even more recent examples, like Will.I.am's Yes We Can, during the Obama campaign, that captured a specific moment.
It really did. And then on the flip side, you get protest songs like Green Day's American Idiot from the 2000s.
Right, expressing disillusionment or critique.
Exactly. Music can articulate dissent just as powerfully as it can express hope or unity.
And it's not just the songs. Artists themselves get involved. You have organizations like Rock to Vote, Headcount.
Vote.org, too.
Yeah.
They partner with musicians for concerts, social media campaigns, registration drives at shows.
Using that platform to reach people, especially younger audiences.
Yeah, it's a really effective way to boost awareness and encourage participation. That link between music and civic action is strong.
Okay, how about food? Is there Election Day food? It's not like Thanksgiving or the 4th of July.
No, not a traditional food holiday, for sure. But you do see some culinary things pop up.
Like those red, white, and blue desserts. Cupcakes, cookies.
Exactly. The patriotic theme definitely makes an appearance. It's a fun, visual way to acknowledge the day.
And I've heard in some smaller towns, maybe more rural areas, you sometimes get potlucks at polling places.
Yeah, that happens. It really emphasizes the community aspect, turning voting into this shared local event, like a town gathering.
That's pretty cool. And for the watch parties we mentioned.
Oh, that's easy. Pizza and popcorn seem to be the universal fuel for watching results come in.
Yes. The go-to comfort foods for a potentially long night.
Totally. And speaking of pizza, there's that group, Pizza to the Polls.
Oh, yeah. I love that idea. They deliver food to people waiting in really long voting lines.
It's brilliant, isn't it? Such a practical, kind way to support people who are sticking it out to vote. Addresses a real barrier, those long waits with a slice of pizza.
Makes a tough wait a little more bearable.
For sure. And one more thing, sometimes local restaurants or coffee shops will offer a little discount or a freebie if you show your I voted sticker.
Oh, nice. A little civic participation perk.
Yeah, just a small way businesses in the community acknowledge and maybe encourage voting.
Okay, let's turn to something even less expected. Plants and animals. Are there Election Day connections there?
Surprisingly, yes. Symbolism, mostly. Think about the oak tree.
Okay. Strength. Endurance.
Exactly. You see it used in political imagery sometimes to represent the strength and resilience of democracy, its deep roots.
Makes sense. And the bald eagle, obviously.
Right, the national bird. Symbol of America, freedom. It pops up frequently in voting visuals, posters, that sort of thing.
And then the big ones. The political party animals. The donkey and the elephant.
The classics. Democrat donkey, Republican elephant. Everyone knows those.
How did those even start? Was it always them?
It mostly comes down to political cartoons, actually, especially Thomas Nast in the late 1800s.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, the donkey was first used kind of negatively against Andrew Jackson, but the Democrats eventually embraced it. And Nast used the elephant to represent the Republican vote strong, solid, and they just stuck.
Wow. From cartoons to enduring symbols and flowers, too. Roses and laurels.
Yeah, historically, you sometimes see those used in imagery around voting or civic duty. They symbolize things like virtue, honor, victory, connecting voting to these respected ideals.
Okay, fascinating connections. Now let's look at people, individuals who've really made a mark on voting rights and engagement.
Absolutely. You have figures like Stacey Abrams, whose work with Fair Fight has been hugely influential in recent years, focusing on voter access and combating suppression.
Her efforts, particularly in Georgia, have drawn a lot of attention. Really highlights the ongoing work needed.
Definitely. And you have to mention John Lewis, a true icon of the civil rights movement.
His whole life was basically dedicated to the fight for voting rights, wasn't it? Facing incredible violence for that cause.
An unbelievable legacy, a constant reminder of the struggle and sacrifice involved in securing and protecting the right to vote for everyone.
And Dolores Huerta.
Yes, co-founder of the United Farm Workers, a lifelong activist pushing for Hispanic and Latinx civic engagement, voter registration, just tireless work over decades.
These are people who really dedicated themselves. And then there's pop culture's role.
Celebrities, for instance, using their platforms.
Was I voted selfies we talked about.
Yeah.
You see them from huge stars, Taylor Swift, LeBron James, Ariana Grande, reaching millions instantly.
Right. The impact is maybe debatable, but it definitely raises visibility, especially with younger people who follow them closely on social media. It normalizes participation.
And TV shows. I always think of Parks and Recreation.
Oh, Leslie Knope? Yes. That show had so many storylines, often funny but also very earnest, about local government, elections, the importance of voting.
It made civic engagement seem relatable, even kind of inspiring in its own way.
Absolutely. It brought those themes into people's living rooms. And then you have the more direct stuff, TV ads, PSAs, especially ones aimed at young voters.
Yeah, constant campaigns trying to get people registered and motivated to turn out.
All part of the ecosystem around encouraging participation.
Okay, let's zoom out geographically. Cities, landmarks, places tied to voting. Philadelphia has to be high on the list.
Oh, absolutely. Birthplace of the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution.
Yeah.
It's symbolically huge for American democracy. Ground zero, in a way.
The foundation was laid there. And then, of course, Washington, D.C.
The seat of power, where the federal government operates, where national election results ultimately play out and power transfers. It's the destination, politically speaking.
And some places resonate because of the struggle for voting rights, right? Like Selma, Alabama.
Selma is incredibly significant. The marches there were pivotal, directly leading to the Voting Rights Act of 1965. It's a powerful, solemn reminder of that fight.
A landmark of the civil rights movement, intrinsically linked to voting.
Without a doubt. And then on Election Day itself, our focus often shifts to specific states.
Swing states.
Yeah.
Michigan, Georgia, Arizona, places like that.
Exactly. States where the election is expected to be close, where the outcome could tip the balance. They become intense battlegrounds.
All eyes are on them. Candidates spend tons of time and money there.
Right, because winning those states is often key to winning the presidency or control of the Senate. And then back to the very local level, those polling places again.
Schools, churches, community centers.
They really are landmarks of democracy in action right in our neighborhoods.
Yeah.
Everyday spaces serving this fundamental purpose.
It makes the whole process feel very tangible, very real.
I think so too. Okay, what about the language itself, the words we use around voting?
Yeah, there's a whole vocabulary, lots of catchphrases.
Like, your vote is your voice. You hear that constantly.
Or democracy only works if you do. Putting the responsibility on the citizen.
Vote like your rights depend on it. That one feels very urgent.
And the classic, every vote counts, which, as we'll discuss, can be literally true.
These phrases are like shorthand, quick reminders of why participation matters. And then there's the slang.
Right. Political junkies have their own lingo. Blue wave or red wave.
Red state, blue state to describe political leanings. GOTV.
Get out the vote. Standard campaign jargon.
And down ballot, referring to all the other races below the main event, like president or governor.
Knowing that slang helps you follow the news coverage, definitely.
For sure. And some slogans have real staying power, power to the people.
That one goes way back. Or the slightly sarcastic one, vote early, vote often.
Huh. Yeah, a tongue-in-cheek nod to historical voting irregularities.
And of course, rock the vote. Still going strong.
These slogans capture a feeling, an era, an attitude towards civic life.
Okay, let's maybe get a bit more philosophical, dig into some core civic ideas. What is democracy, really? We hear about direct versus representative.
That's fundamental. Direct democracy, like ancient Athens, means citizens vote on everything directly. Imagine that today.
Chaos.
Right. So representative democracy, like we have in the U.S., is where we elect people representatives to make decisions for us, Congress, the president, etc.
And the term democratic republic gets used a lot for the U.S. What's that nuance?
It basically means we have democratic elections, but within a framework of constitutional law. It's not just majority rule on everything. The Constitution sets rules, protects rights, balances power. It's a blend.
Okay, democratic elections plus rule of law.
Got it.
And underpinning all of this is the idea of consent of the governed.
The bedrock principle, the idea that a government's legitimacy comes from the people it governs, and that consent is expressed primarily through voting.
It sounds good in theory, but sometimes it feels like one vote can't possibly make a difference.
I know that feeling is common, but history shows us otherwise sometimes. Think about Bush v. Gore in 2000.
Florida, right, decided by, what was it, just over 500 votes?
537 votes officially, out of millions cast in the state. That decided the entire presidency. It's a stark reminder.
Wow, 537 votes. That's incredibly close.
And it's not just presidential races. Local elections, school boards, city council, mayoral races are often decided by handfuls of votes, sometimes even a single vote.
And those local races can impact your daily life pretty directly.
Absolutely. Decisions about schools, roads, local taxes, those are often made by people elected in very low turnout, very close elections. So yeah, one vote can matter.
Okay, point taken. Let's talk about some of the controversies, the laws around voting. Voter ID laws are always in the news.
Always. It's a constant debate. On one side, the argument is about preventing fraud, ensuring election integrity.
And on the other?
Concerns about access, that strict ID laws might disproportionately affect certain groups, low-income voters, minorities, students, the elderly who might find it harder to get the required ID. It's a balancing act with passionate arguments on both sides.
Finding that balance is tricky. Then there's gerrymandering.
Ah, the fine art of drawing electoral maps.
Usually to benefit one party, right? Packing opposition voters into one district or spreading them out thinly across many.
Exactly. It's manipulating the boundaries to engineer outcomes, basically. It can make elections less competitive and lead to representation that doesn't accurately reflect the overall vote share. It's very controversial.
Seems like it undermines the whole idea of fair representation.
That's the core criticism, yes. And we also have to acknowledge voter suppression, historically and even today.
What forms does that take? Historically, we mentioned literacy tests, poll taxes.
Right. Things explicitly designed to disenfranchise Black voters after the Civil War. But modern concerns include things like voter roll purges, removing eligible voters from the lists, sometimes inaccurately.
Okay, what else?
Limited numbers of polling places or reduced hours, especially in certain neighborhoods, leading to those super long lines. And disinformation campaigns spreading false information about when or how to vote, trying to discourage people.
So the methods change, but the goal of making it harder for certain people to vote persists.
That's the argument, yes. Understanding these tactics, past and present, is crucial for protecting voting rights.
Okay, let's think about the structure. Election cycles. It's not just one big election every 4 years.
Not at all. We have local elections, mayors, city councils, school boards, judges sometimes, state elections, governors, state legislators, and federal elections, president, senators, representatives.
All on different schedules, often in different years. It's a lot to keep track of.
It really is. And the process for any given election is pretty involved, too.
Right, the timeline. It starts way before Election Day.
Yeah, candidates declare, then you have primaries or caucuses to choose the party nominees, debates. That's all pre-election.
Then the voting itself, which now includes lots of options.
Exactly. Early in-person voting, absentee ballots, mail-in voting, and then the traditional Election Day voting.
And it's not over when the polls close.
Nope. Then comes accounting, which can take time, especially with mail-in ballots, then certification of the results, and for presidential elections, the whole electoral college process.
It's quite a complex machine.
It is. Designed with checks and balances, but definitely complex.
Beyond just voting, there's also a lot around voter education and community engagement.
Yeah, trying to help people navigate that complexity. You see things like voter education toolkits.
It's in those, typically.
Things like explaining what's actually on your specific ballot, the candidates, the ballot measures, information on how things like the Electoral College work, maybe helping you figure out which issues matter most to you, or even finding your polling place or district.
Resources to help people feel more prepared and informed.
Exactly, empowering voters. And artists get involved here too, beyond the music we talked about.
Like designing posters?
Yeah, campaign posters, art focused on voting awareness, Shepard Fairey's vote posters are a famous example. Visual art can be really impactful.
I can see that. And even in schools, getting kids involved.
Right. Activities like having students create why I vote posters or designing mock ballots. It helps demystify the process early on, build that sense of civic understanding.
Fostering future voters.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Now, how does the U.S. compare globally? Are we unique in how we do elections?
In some ways, yes. In others, no. One big difference is compulsory voting.
Where you have to vote.
Yeah, like in Australia or Belgium. It's required by law, often with small fines if you don't. That's a very different philosophy than the U.S. voluntary system.
Wow, yeah. Very different. What else?
Election day itself. In the U.S., it's famously a Tuesday, not a holiday.
Right. We talked about why Tuesday.
But over 100 other countries actually hold their national elections on a national holiday, or often on a weekend. The idea being to make it easier for everyone to participate without work conflicts.
That seems like it would boost turnout.
That's the argument many people make here, too, for making Election Day a holiday. And the voting system itself differs.
How so?
We mostly use first-past-the-post, winner-take-all in a district, but other systems exist. Ranked choice voting is used in some places now, like Maine and Alaska, where you rank candidates in order of preference.
I've heard about that. And proportional representation.
Yeah, that's common in many European countries. Parties get seats in the legislature roughly proportional to the percentage of the national vote they receive. It tends to allow more smaller parties to gain representation.
So lots of different ways to structure voting and representation.
Definitely. Understanding those alternatives gives context to our own system's strengths and weaknesses.
Okay, maybe we can weave in some inspiring words now. Quotes about voting that resonate.
Sure, Abraham Lincoln. The ballot is stronger than the bullet.
Powerful. Sets up voting as the alternative to violence for settling differences.
Exactly. And Susan B. Anthony, the suffragist. Somebody struggled for your right to vote. Use it.
A direct call to honor that history, that struggle we talked about. Don't take it for granted.
Precisely. How about Martin Luther King Jr.? Our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter.
Connecting voting to speaking up, to engaging with important issues, silence isn't an option.
Right. And Marian Wright Edelman, founder of the Children's Defense Fund. Democracy is not a spectator sport.
Love that one. It requires active participation, not just watching from the sidelines.
All really potent reminders of the significance of voting.
Okay, let's wrap things up with some fun facts. Little interesting tidbits about Election Day.
Always good for trivia. Like the fact we mentioned Election Day still isn't a federal holiday, despite lots of pushes for it.
Seems counterintuitive, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And North Dakota is unique how?
They have no voter registration. You just show up with valid ID proving residency and age. The only state like that.
Wow. And Oregon was the pioneer for something else.
All mail-in voting. They were the first state to go fully vote by mail back in 2000.
Ahead of the curve there. And absentee ballots have deep roots.
Yeah, they originated during the Civil War, believe it or not, for soldiers away fighting.
That makes sense. Need to let them participate. And we mentioned the Voting Rights Act followed the Selma marches.
A direct cause and effect in history. Protest leading to landmark legislation.
And that record 2020 turnout number, what was the percentage again?
About 66.8% of the voting eligible population, highest in over a century.
That's significant. What about those I voted stickers?
They're not all the same. Each state can have its own design, sometimes even counties or cities. They can be quite unique and collectible.
Huh. Sticker collectors for democracy. And election superstitions are real.
Apparently so. Some people wear specific colors, like red for Republicans, or carry lucky charms when they vote. A little bit of magical thinking, perhaps.
Whatever helps, I guess. And turnout highs and lows. 2020 was high.
Highest in modern times, yeah. The lowest ever in a presidential election, way back in 1792. Less than 10% turnout.
Wow. A very different era.
Very different electorate back then, too, of course. And just some lighter stuff. People track presidential pets, memorable campaign slogans. They become part of the cultural memory of elections.
Has a bit of personality. And finally, those important firsts.
Right. Geraldine Ferraro, first woman VP candidate on a major ticket. Barack Obama, first black president. JFK, youngest elected president. And recently, Maxwell Frost, first Gen Z member of Congress.
Milestones, showing change and evolution in who holds power.
Exactly. Reflecting a changing America.
So we've covered a lot of ground here. History, culture, process, people. When you pull it all together, what's the big takeaway about Election Day?
I think, for me, it's the sheer complexity and importance. It's not just one thing. It's historical, it's cultural, it's deeply personal, it's logistical, it's philosophical. and it's constantly evolving.
Yeah.
It really embodies the ideals of democracy, but also all the struggles and debates around making those ideals a reality for everyone. Access, fairness, representation. These are ongoing conversations.
Absolutely. And understanding all those different layers, the history, the traditions, the mechanics, the current challenges, it feels essential for being an informed citizen, doesn't it?
Couldn't agree more. Knowing this stuff helps you engage more meaningfully.
So maybe a final thought for you, the listener. As you think about Election Day, what part of this deep dive stuck with you the most? Was it the history, the personal stories, the mechanics, the global comparisons? What does participating in this whole process really mean to you? Something to chew on.
Good question to leave folks with.
Thanks for taking this deep dive with us today.